Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 drama. After the massive conflict at the end of the Brazilian Grand Prix between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, Perez has outlined his intention to compete for the World Championship victory next season, saying he's going to take down Verstappen along the way. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Christian Horner, happy birthday, beautiful graphic gift from everyone I thought was kind of funny. And these of course were some of the quotes that were coming out during and after the Brazilian Grand Prix. I think if Max has 2 championships, it's down to me, it says Perez. Of course, look, did Verstappen disrespect Perez this past weekend by refusing to give up that position? And even Perez said on the radio, it shows who he really is. So look, has Verstappen done himself and the team a very, poor service here by throwing them back into the drama mix that they've been in for the last several months for various reasons? The cost cap drama, the Sky Sports boycott drama, and now this. It's not been a great few months for the World Drivers and World Constructors winning team for 2022. And will Verstappen live to regret kind of disrespecting and, well, maybe ruining the trust of Perez in this way? Because, look, next time Hamilton's charging through the field next season and Christian Horner's on the radio to Perez saying, look, Perez, can you hold up Hamilton for me? Maybe he's going to be like, will I do that? Will I do that, Christian? I'm not really sure that I will. And that could hurt Max's chances of a 3rd championship next season, especially if the Mercedes is a good car. But Perez says, look, I'm not here to be the number 2 guy. And look, it's fair enough for Perez to say this. All drivers, want to say this and want to believe they can be the number 1 guy in the team. Now look, whether Perez can actually achieve that is difficult to say, but there was times at this season where Perez was, at least in conversation for being stronger than Max on certain weekends. Didn't work out over the course of the season, but Perez is not ready to just sit down and be the number 2 guy for Red Bull, especially I'm sure after all the drama of the past weekends and that relationship, how it's going with Verstappen. He will, but this is one of the quotes. I'll share the full quotes here in a second. It really depends on how comfortable I am at the start of the season with the car, as I was at the beginning of this season, then it slipped away. But he's certainly intending to fight for the championship next year. And this is a key point about Perez, because there was a couple of races this season where Perez was faster than Max for practically the entire weekends. Monaco was one of them, Baku was another one. So we'll see here the numbers here in Monaco. This is FP1 in Monaco, where Perez is faster than Verstappen. FP2, Perez faster than Verstappen, Perez P3, Verstappen P4. FP3, Perez was on P1 here, Verstappen was P4. Qualifying, Perez outqualified Verstappen in rather controversial circumstances. And then in the actual race result, Perez won the race and Verstappen was 3rd. So yeah, Perez was fast in all 5 sessions that weekend. Then we went to Baku the next time out. Perez again was fastest in FP1, quicker than Max. In FP2, he was P2, Verstappen was P3. In FP3, Verstappen was P3, Perez was P1. In qualifying, Perez got 2nd and Verstappen was 3rd, and then Max Verstappen beat him in the race. So that was 9 sessions in a row between Monaco and surprisingly really in Baku, where Perez outscored Verstappen or out kind of qualified him before in the race Verstappen had more pace. So that was a time in the season where Perez was he wasn't really ever faster than Max, but there was a time where he was feeling a bit more comfortable in the car than Verstappen was. And we kind of see that in general when Max Verstappen doesn't have a car that, like, if he turns the wheel, he wants the car to turn into the corner. If it doesn't respond immediately, he's not so happy with it. That was a lot of the complaints he had back in Brazil as well this past weekend. And Perez and Max were not too dissimilar in terms of pace this past weekend as well. So it's kind of a theory. It's not exactly known per se, but it's kind of like an idea that is held that over the course of the season, Red Bull tends to kind of, move their car philosophy and setup and design towards what Max Verstappen likes and is favored with, and Perez just kind of has to deal with it. And Verstappen really loves his car so on edge that very few other drivers can handle that. We've seen it in the past with Gasly and Albon and even Perez and maybe even Riccardo briefly back in the day, that it's so hard to be Verstappen's teammate because, look, he's so talented that they make the car for him as the season progresses, and it becomes increasingly difficult for their teammates. We saw even a few races after Baku in France, let's say, where Perez was like half a second a lap slower than Verstappen, and that apparently was a lot down to maybe setup moving towards Verstappen's direction over those last several races, and the updates that were getting brought to the car were to suit Verstappen's style rather than Perez's. That's why it can be so difficult to be his teammate. But Perez is like, look, if the car suits me, I'm coming for blood, right? Certainly this season started very well. Some reliability issues in the beginning, but we were looking on track. We were in the mix for the championship early on. It was true that there was a time briefly, like after Monaco, where it was like, yeah, could Perez mix it up with Max here? Obviously, it turned out not to be the case, but look, he had a couple of bad races. I think Canada was not a great one when he put it in the wall. So he goes on to say there's some work to do in that regard together with the team to make sure we can keep the consistency throughout the year, come back next year and fight for the title. If we can have a similar level of car for next year. It's important we finish the season on a high. And as he says, look, he still feels like he's in the prime of his career, but it depends on how comfortable he is with the car. Then the car kind of slipped away from him, he said, which isn't exactly a massive surprise. And then he couldn't really find himself fighting for the title. But he does believe that he's pretty much driving at his best right now. And look, certainly around street circuits this season, even in Baku, but certainly Monaco and Singapore, Perez was on a different level. And you can argue that there hasn't really been a circuit this season where Perez has actually just outperformed Max in terms of pure pace. Monaco is always a bit of an outlier in that sense because you can't really tell what the pace is going to be because you just don't overtake around Monaco, right? Singapore, Max obviously was fighting from the back or had a difficult race obviously there because he started P10 after the fuel drama that they had there. And even looking back to, in fairness, like Saudi Arabia, I wonder what would have happened there because Perez was leading that race, got pole position, was doing so well until the safety car kind of messed up his race as well. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about this? The reality is that Perez probably isn't going to be winning a world championship with Red Bull. As long as Max Verstappen is their guy, he's the guy they're going to build around. But it's interesting nonetheless. I think that, look, it makes sense. If you're a driver in Formula One with a top team, you've got to believe you've got the ability to win a world championship. And who knows what happens next season? Maybe there's some crazy drama and Max is just, his car's breaking out every other race. And maybe Perez can even have a chance there. But the thing is, let's say the season next time progresses similarly to this one, as in Max Verstappen has clearly got more points and more pace than Perez. And maybe that's because the car suits him. Maybe it's for other reasons, just more pace or more quali pace or whatever it might be. And they need Perez to be, to play second fiddle, to be the Bottas basically of the team, to try and help their number one guy win the championship, as Perez has done in the past. Will he be so willing to do that now after all the drama of the last few days? Maybe, but also maybe not, right? And you couldn't really blame Perez if he said, you know what, Max, you got your reasons. Well, I've got my reasons for not giving you any help here. I'm, going all out for myself, and it's not potentially going to create a great team dynamic there. Maybe Perez kind of comes down to this and says, you know what, okay, fair enough. You do employ me at the end of the day. You do pay me to be Max's right-hand man, but he's not shying away from his intentions to compete for the championship next season. You can't exactly blame him. And even Helmut Marko was kind of, putting Perez down in a way, because Perez has said earlier, they're like, yeah, this car's gone away from me a bit. The car's gone to favour a different driving style, whoever's driving style that might be, and Perez has therefore struggled. And Helmut Marko has denied that and says the only thing that's changed is it lost some weight. So it's up to you, Perez, to get better, basically. So, I don't know. It doesn't always seem sunshine and rainbows within that Red Bull camp, let's just say. And this is only a couple of days ago where Helmut Marko said this, even before the Brazilian Grand Prix. Quick note as well on car designs next season, because Red Bull obviously have the best car this season. It's, pretty much a perfect car. You could argue the amount of races they've won with it this year, 16 out of 21 so far. And there was a time where teams like Williams and Aston Martin are basically copying parts of the Red Bull. But as the season has gone on, with Mercedes getting better, what are they expecting next year, Red Bull? Will we turn up and see 9 Red Bull copies? It's incredibly unlikely for that to happen. Mercedes will probably stick with their design. Ferrari will probably double down on theirs. Other midfield teams might take some inspiration from Red Bull, but they might take some inspiration from other teams as well, and potentially Ferrari, or now even Mercedes. The thing is, though, for Mercedes, they've come good so late in the season that any teams that have had designs on the table to kind of build around for next year probably won't now be switching to Mercedes philosophy. So if they do have the fastest philosophy, they might have it all their own way next season, until teams start to catch on a little bit. But it's also been no secret that this year's been less competitive than previous seasons. These, I thought, were some interesting numbers. In 2020 and 2021, there were 13 different drivers respectively on the podium, despite 2020 being a shorter season. Pretty crazy numbers. Probably expected at the end of a regulation cycle to have other teams and other drivers be more competitive. This season there's only been 7. The 2 drivers from Red Bull, from Ferrari, from Mercedes, and also Lando Norris back in Imola for McLaren. Outside of that, no other driver outside of the top 3 teams has found themselves on the podium. Understandable, but that's still unfortunate at the same time. Just a quick comment to say that yes, further indications do report Daniel Ricciardo will be Red Bull's reserve driver in 2023. Makes sense that obviously the relationship has been there, and who knows what happens with Perez. If they need a man like Danny Ricciardo to step into their team for 1 or more races, who knows what's going to happen there. Or even if something goes wrong elsewhere and Ricciardo might need to step in. Quick comment on McLaren, Ricciardo's former teammate, because I know that Lando Norris has said that, you know what, by the time we get to 2024, if we're not competitive, there's no excuses remaining. But their new wind tunnel, which is a key part of McLaren's new development cycle, has not, basically it's delayed. It's not going to get finished this year. It's going to be operational halfway through 2024. 2023, which is going to hurt this year's potential car for 2023 and potentially also next year's car for 2024, just because, look, if you open a new facility halfway through the year and all of a sudden the data isn't quite aligning between the two, you've got a real issue on your hands. So yeah, not ideal for McLaren's possibilities of getting back to the front of the midfield. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.